The United States and Israel have launched coordinated strikes deep inside Iran, and this is not a limited operation. Explosions have rocked Tehran. Smoke has been seen rising near key government districts. Israeli officials say military sites, intelligence hubs and symbols of state power are being targeted. Images suggest damage near high-security compounds, even as whereabouts of Iran's supreme leader remain unclear. US President Donald Trump is not just talking about degrading Iran's nuclear program, he's openly calling for a regime change. The US president has declared the start of what he calls major combat operations and has vowed to raise Iran's missile industry, annihilate its naval capabilities and eliminate what he describes as imminent threats from the Iranian regime. In a direct message to the Iranian people, he urged them to seize what he called the moment of destiny.
לפני שעה קלה יצאו ישראל וארצות הברית למערכה משותפת, מבצע שאגת הארי. מטרת המבצע, לשים קץ לאיום ממשטר האייתולות באיראן. בשעה זו תוקף צה"ל מטרות של משטר הדיכוי, מתקנים של משמרות המהפכה והבסיס, ויחד עם צבא ארצות הברית, אתרי טילים בליסטיים שמאיימים הן על ישראל והן על כוחות ארצות הברית. מבצע זה יימשך ככל הדרוש. במשך 47 שנים קרא משטר הרשע באיראן מוות לישראל, מוות לאמריקה. הוא רמס את אזרחי ארצו. הוא הטיל מורא על עמי האזור. הוא פרס רשת טרור מסועפת בעולם כולו.
We obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After that attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore. Instead, they attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland.
And this is no longer just about nuclear facilities. This is about the future of the Iranian state. And Iran has responded swiftly, firing waves of ballistic missiles and drones towards Israel, triggering air raid sirens going northern Israel and up to Golan Heights. But the escalation did not stop there. In fact, Gulf nations, including the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait, all of which host US military bases and assets, have reported strikes or falling debris within their own territories. In fact, Iraq and Jordan have also confirmed aerial threats crossing into their airspace. This signals a dangerous widening of the conflict, one that risks pulling the entire Gulf into direct confrontation. Iran's foreign minister has called the attack an act of war, vowing a crushing response. This could now move in one of the three directions: a rapid but intense exchange of strikes before back-channel diplomacy kicks in, a prolonged regional war involving Gulf states and proxy forces, or internal instability inside Iran if regime change calls begin to resonate. Global markets are already reacting. Oil prices are now volatile. Military assets across the region are on high alert. What began as targeted strikes now carries the language of overthrow. And when regime change becomes an objective, wars rarely remain contained. The next 48 to 72 hours will be crucial. Let's decode the latest with our panelists. Joining me on the show is Lieutenant Colonel Avital Lebevich, Director of AJC, Israel, and former IDF spokesperson, is live from Israel. Also with us is Major General SBS Thana, Defense and Strategic Expert. Joining us on the show is Professor Swaran Singh from School of International Studies, JNU, Air Marshal VPS Rana, Defense and Security Expert, Surinder Singh Lalli, who's also a Foreign Affairs Expert, joining us on the show. Gentlemen, and the only lady, thank you very much, all of you, for taking time out for joining us on the show. I want to first come to you. Avital, to
I'm
understand.
sorry, we just have sirens here right now. As I'm speaking to you, so I'm going to shelter and I'll join you in a few minutes. I
Absolutely.
apologize.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look forward to having you on the show. All right, sirens going on off right now in Israel. I believe in Tel Aviv. That's where our guest was joining us from. She's an IDF spokesperson. But I'll come to you, Major General SBS Thana. We've been tracking all these movements of the troops, of the missiles, and the entire West Asia, which is currently on the brink of a war. I have to ask you, from all the statements that have come in so far, from Donald Trump, from Iranian regime, from Benjamin Netanyahu, the end goal now is no more to contain Iran's nuclear ambition. It's now to affect a change in leadership, is to ensure that the regime falls. In your assessment, a strike of this nature, of this magnitude, will it have any impact on the regime at all?
Firstly, as you rightly asked, will it have any impact on regime? That is, I think it may not have any impact on regime for the simple reason because Iran knew it is coming. There was no surprise involved. And they have named successors. Even if Khamenei gets killed, somebody else will take over. And if he gets killed, there must be 2-3 persons named in the line of succession. And also, if that happens, even if that doesn't work, then somebody from IRGC will take over. I don't think it can take on, it will lead to regime change. But that apart, let me first put everything in context. If you see the political aim, based on all the statements, as you rightly mentioned, the political aim of US is a regime change. The strategic aim of US is destroy the nuclear arsenal, destroy the missile capability, and destroy the military capability of IRGC. As far as Iran is concerned, their political aim is survival, and their military aim is impose such a high cost on US that sustaining further operations become difficult for them. Now, this being said, these are the aims. Now, when we look at what is happening, I think there are certain problems with the strategy of United States. Their ambition that Iran will give up missile capability, it will also stop all other activities, and even the nuclear part for the peaceful development, I think that was a little ambitious, number one. Number two, let's be very clear. This US strike is President Trump's initiative. It does not have the approval of Senate. And it does not have any approval of UNSC by any stretch of imagination. So therefore, it is something to do with President Trump's own ratings going down and his own survival and a diversion of attention from whatever is happening internally in United States. And similar is the situation in Israel too. So both these leaders perhaps think that a diversion of this kind can give them a little more points in their favor in their domestic audience. That's number one. Next point which I would like to highlight is...
Sorry to cut you short, General Astana, would you think it could simply backfire? Instead of giving more brownie points, it could majorly backfire, because in the past we have seen many a times when US deployed its forces in Vietnam, in Afghanistan, in Iraq for that matter, there was a lot of internal pressure because Americans woke up to the reality, the harsh reality, that they are paying the price for what their presidents have done.
Absolutely, it is likely to backfire. You are absolutely right there, because the conditions are not exactly the same as they were in case of Venezuela or elsewhere.
Absolutely.
So therefore, the problem with in this particular situation is that Iran may not have the capability proportionate to US and Israel put together as far as the military assets are concerned, but they certainly have a fair amount of capability to create nuisance all around and impose kind of cost which by striking their bases, the American bases, and striking their allies in the damages which have happened in the bases are still not yet out, because America is very good in information warfare, and therefore they would not give out their casualties. But once these casualties reach the people there in America, there may be a pushback as well
Absolutely.
within the country as well.
Absolutely. And in fact, Donald Trump did accept that there could be eventual casualties. We don't know if there has been any so far in the attacks carried out by Iran. But Professor Swaran Singh, Netanyahu framed these strikes as Iranians and an attempt to help Iranians overthrow tyranny. And those are the words that we also heard Donald Trump using. He said it's an opportunity for the people of Iran to overthrow the regime. But fact of the matter is, more than 45 people are confirmed dead in a school in Iran. These are civilian casualties. If you want to unite people of a country, the last thing you do is hurt the civilian infrastructure and kill innocent civilians. That's exactly what, some of these strikes have done.
Absolutely. In fact, such a collateral damage is only going to, make sure that the regime will use it to build up national support and prepare the nation for a long haul in that sense of responding to United States. But it's interesting that during a couple of months back, when protests in Iran were at their peak, happening in almost all provinces of Iran, and the same President Trump had said, help is on the way. He's not using that language anymore. He's talking of asking Iranians themselves to treat this as their hour of their freedom at their hand. He's asking them to take over. In that sense, he's expecting Iranians to do things by themselves, which I think that ideal moment is gone, because these protests have been subdued over a period of time. And now Iran is perhaps fairly prepared, and there is enormous confusion about claims of safety of President Pezeshkian and Supreme Leader Khamenei. Reports are saying that the defense minister, as you mentioned, is killed. They are even saying IRGC commander is killed. Iran is denying those claims, etc., etc. But fact is, Iran has responded to, I think, 7 or 8 places already in the whole region. And this region put together has up to 40,000 Americans in 13 bases. And that they could become potentially vulnerable to Iranian missile strikes, or at least it will create enormous panic. And that is something that will not go very well at home with the MAGA supporters, who don't want American soldiers to be entangled in foreign, sort of conflicts. They want to focus only within their own boundaries. And in that context, with the midterm elections coming in November, early April, President Trump is supposed to go to Beijing to meet Xi Jinping in China. Now, how this unfolds, because their initial surgical strike, which was clearly aimed, and IDF has now clarified that the targets were clearly places where they thought military and political leaders were getting together. And if the outcome is not what they desired, then in that sense, it is already showcasing that the surgical strikes have not gone the way they wanted them to go, and Iran has responded. And therefore now it is kind of a compulsion driven exercise that they are saying that these operations will continue as long as necessary, as they're saying, and they're calling it major combat operations. I remember Russians were calling their operations in Ukraine as military operations. Now, whether it is going to go in that kind of long term, and fundamentally, if nothing else, it's going to be panic and destruction in the immediate region. But this is also, region from where countries like China and India depend for enormous amount of energy imports.
Absolutely.
Energy disruptions, airline disruptions, it's going to cause enormous trouble to several other countries, I assume, in that sense. And, looking as of now, it looks like regime change is not looking an easy possibility. Boots on the ground is not at all a possibility as far as I understand it. And therefore, it's confusion writ large as to what were the aims and whether those aims are going to be achieved. Iran is now being asked not just to give up building nuclear weapons, but also give up their long-range missiles, give up all the enriched uranium, which President Trump had said they had destroyed last June in their attacks on those nuclear establishments. Now they want them to surrender that enriched uranium, etc. So it's a expanding war objectives, minimal success in their initial surgical operations, and it in that sense doesn't look like as easy as it was, for example, in case of Maduro, where Vice President was in cahoots with CIA in that sense. The last lesson that America has in regime change, I always say, is Afghanistan, where it was a regime change in reverse. Now, whether Iran is going to, be any different from what happened in Afghanistan is something that, I would keep my fingers crossed on.
In fact, worse than what happened in Afghanistan, for that matter. Iran is far more organized. It's far more complex. Afghanistan was battered, a war-torn country with little arsenal as far as its own, arms and ammunition is concerned. We're looking at an organized militia. We're looking at an organized military here, by the way of, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. So I'm assuming the impact is going to be far, far worse. Air Marshal VPS Rana is also with us. Air Marshal, looking at the current strikes, the fact that US is calling it sustained operations which might continue without any actual impact on ground. What we are essentially looking in the short run is chaos. We are looking at anarchy. We're looking at an expanding war with more Gulf nations now thrown into the battle without an end result.
Absolutely, Sweta. I don't think there are very clear objectives that are laid. As of now, what it shows that it is a very confused strategy, so to say, with not very clearly laid out objectives. Like my other previous speakers have also said, you are expanding the scope of warfare where it is not really achievable in short time. Like their earlier strike was purely looking at the objective of limiting their nuclear aspirations. But this does not seem so. Now here you are wanting them to get rid of their regime. They're wanting to get rid of missiles and drones and the entire military capability, and then literally wanting them to come to their knees, which is not possible. If you study all the operations that have happened in past, like you also said yourself, there has been a tremendous preparation, there has been a tremendous build-up, and the objectives are very clearly laid out. And even in those operations, the success was very limited. And like rightly Professor Sohn Singh also said, like in case of Afghanistan, it was a reversal of the objectives that you had laid for yourself. And my fear is that here, with this kind of confused strategy, I just hope that it does not go Russia-Ukraine way. Because if it does go, and Iran is very, very capable of stretching it to those limits. Today, one of the major strength of the Iranian is that they have a huge stockpile of missiles, and they've got a huge stockpile and a great capability as far as the drone warfare is concerned. And some of it is already evident in the strikes that they have done. So they can really, really do a lot of damage to the US interests. US has many softer target in the region. There are a lot of other countries where their assets are. The US directly as a country may not be under threat, but their interests certainly are under tremendous threat. And until and unless you have a really surgical objectives and surgical implementation of those through a surgical strikes, I don't think US is really going to wind up in a hurry. They are going to pay a really, really heavy price for this. That is my assessment.
All right, and Surinder Singh Lali, how long before Iran's stockpile and its arsenal of missiles and drones run out? How long before it's depleted? In a sense, I want to get an estimate of what is the volume of their stockpile to last them through weeks and months. Earlier on the show, in fact, an hour ago, I spoke to one of the advisors for Benjamin Netanyahu who said that it's going to be a matter of few weeks, maybe a month, not more than that. That's the estimate that Israeli side has, that it's only going to last for a month until Iran runs out of its stockpile, post which there'll be chaos and anarchy, and perhaps that will in itself enable people to come out on streets and start challenging the administration. That's the estimate they have. Is that something you agree with?
Thank you, Shweta. Shweta, I'm not too sure, because the kind of help China has been given to Iran. Let me open this up. I see this in two aspects. Number one is the Jewish lobby, the AIPAC, and the Jewish funding, and also the Epstein files, which pressurizes the American Congress to to use America in terms of the interest of the Israel in the state in the Middle East. And number two is, let's understand one thing. This is also a proxy war between America and China. You see the way America is heading, Venezuela, and also now Iran. Now, America and China are loggerheads with each other because China really choked America with the rare earths. So that didn't go well. And now America is trying everything to choke China and the energy supplies. That's what Venezuela was, and that's what probably Iran is also. So there are two aspects to it. Now the question for you asked me is how long this will last. That's a very tough question to answer because two people can start a difference in opinion, but when it's going to end is very tough. And why it is even more tougher? Because America has done 70 regime changes, with Bangladesh as the last one and Afghanistan as the second last. Now, we all know that Afghanistan is not even a patch on Iran. I mean, Iran is a civilization. America spent $2.3 trillion. And what they did, they came to fight Taliban and they said, no, thank you, sir, gave the stockpile, left the mess for us and left back. And not to mention 32 billion is what Pakistan fleeced, and we're stuck with this in our region. In Iraq and Afghanistan, they lost 8,000 soldiers. So I'm not too sure how this regime change can happen without being boots on the ground. And boots on the ground is what Donald Trump stood for. He said that I don't want to go for any foreign wars. That's not exactly what he's doing. So I'm not too sure what way this is heading. But answering your question, it is still going to go down more south till it goes up more north.
Okay.
Because as I said, and as the previous panelist said, that Iran is not as easy as the United States of America, which is sitting 10,000 miles away, would think, because it's a civilization. And the more they attack, the girls' hostel that they attacked and killed 30 of them, people are going to rally for the flag. So if anything, the fringe supporters will also come to rally. So it's going to be far more complicated because this is not a Maduro that they can pick up in a helicopter. He's a spiritual head.
Right.
He has people around him and he has people favoring him.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. It's not going to be as easy as it has been with Venezuela. That is for a fact. Avital Lebovich is back with us. She's a former IDF spokesperson. Avital, there is a consensus here on the panel that there seems to be some sort of confusion on why these strikes happened to begin with. If it were to affect a regime change, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a long drawn battle. On the other hand, if it is to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions, there was no need to attack it. Conversations were already happening. What's the end goal here?
I would say the end goal is actually to create the proper conditions so a regime change could eventually take place. Now, Iran is a huge country, as you all know, which means that this is not going to happen tomorrow morning. Now, we are only 10 hours into this operation. And therefore, I suggest we be very careful with assuming there will be boots on the ground or not on the ground and what will happen. We are just at the beginning. This is really just the first day, not even 24 hours have passed. So the end goal would be, first of all, to help the people of Iran to set the right conditions, to weaken the regime so that eventually the people of Iran could perhaps move that extra step, and then maybe we will see a regime change. Now, the regime change could be in another few months. It could be in another year. But we don't want the regime to go to the same point as it has been 2 months ago or half a year ago when it was stronger before June, before the operation that Israel hit Iran in June. That's exactly the goal, and it will take time to achieve. We need to wait and see what the next days bring.
There's in fact some breaking news coming in on the show. The death toll from the strike on Iranian school has now risen to 85. That's the number as a result of a strike on a girls' primary school in the southern Iranian town of Minab, according to the local prosecutor cited by state media. The visuals are on your screens of the debris and whatever is left over of that strike. Avital Lebovich, if the idea is to unite people, how are you going to unite people by killing civilians? Because we're looking at civilian casualties here to the tune of upwards of 85 to be exact.
First of all, the report you are mentioning, my understanding is that it was a failed rocket launch by Iran. It wasn't a direct hit by Israel. Second, I would say that the Iranian people received in the morning, as soon as this operation began, a text message to their phones asking them to stay away from military sites, from defense institutions, because this is the main targets
But
for
this is
this
a
stage
school.
of the operation. So on the contrary, there is no will, and of course there is no motivation, and it's not a goal to hit or to target innocent people. That is not the goal at all.
I
The
understand that,
target-
but it's a school. It is not a military installation, it's a school which has
but
been
how do you
hit.
know it's an Israeli attack?
Okay, so you're denying that it's an Israeli attack because that's what the state media is saying right now.
Yes, the state media also said that the talks in Geneva were very successful, and we know it were not. So I would really be very
Donald Trump
careful.
said the talks in Geneva were fairly successful. In fact, US President said that the talks are successful and there could be a possibility of a breakthrough. Not just the Iranian media, it was the US President who said so as well.
The US President repeatedly said that he's hoping for a diplomatic solution, and
That's
that's
right.
why chances were given. But Arakchi went to the cameras immediately after the talks were over and said that the gaps have been minimized and there is optimism all around, just like the foreign minister of Oman said the same messaging. And we know that is not the case because the gaps were huge. And as you heard in the president's speech from a few hours ago, he does admit that unfortunately, despite of the many efforts to reach diplomatic solutions, that wasn't the case. And by the way, do you think we enjoy going to shelters and going back and forth and risking our lives?
Not
Of
at
course
all.
not. But
I'm sure.
unfortunately,
I agree. I'm sure. All my heart goes out to the fact that you have to move to shelters very frequently. We don't live under such conditions, so I can't imagine what it must be for you to move out to shelters. I'm sure it's a state of panic, but it's my duty to ask questions of both the sides, and that's what I'm doing right now. Professor Swaran Singh, you were raising your hand there, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to say that yes, one can keep insinuating as to whose missile was the one that led to collateral damage at girls' school. But something that President Trump himself has said recently, the British Prime Minister also said, apparently negotiations in Geneva are still open and they're inviting Iran to come and continue conversation there. So it's a bit puzzling as to how military strikes can take place while at the same time you're expecting delegations to continue to talk on issues that they were talking, and they were not saying we are either stuck or we are unhappy. They were all saying that we are progressing very well. And something that recently Ali Khamenei himself said, President Trump actually, that it's not the first time that regime change is being attempted by Western nations. He believed that from 1979 onwards, repeated attempts have been made. So, hold this effort to, impose stringent sanctions to create a nuclear deal and then to walk away from nuclear deal. Apparently, those initiatives that regime change have not delivered so far. Neither today's strikes delivered any such outcome, apparently. So, as a spokesperson from panelist from Israel is saying, we can hopefully think of these kind of off and on strikes continuing for a month or for a year, ultimately continuing till sort of regime change happens, either because of the natural death of a leader or next elections or whatever. We saw the regime change in Venezuela, for example. The same party, same ministers, everybody is same, and vice president has now become president. Is that something that is a possibility, if you allow me to ask the Israeli panelists?
Absolutely, absolutely. Avital, when it comes to regime change, what does Israel really have in mind here? Because we are not looking at possibility of, Iranian, either the military weakening anytime soon, because it's quite strong and they have a strong, in fact, stockpile of arms and ammunition. So that's number one. Number two, Supreme Leader already has about 4 to 5 people he's identified who could be his possible successors. That's what reports are suggesting at this point. So when you say a regime change would be imminent in the next month or so, are you looking at perhaps reinstating someone to govern Iran? What sort of model are you looking at? Could it possibly be Reza Pahlavi, because he today in fact was one of the first people to have hailed those strikes, saying that this could be a moment for Iran to unite and for people to come out on street and perhaps topple the government. So are you looking at reinstating some sort of civilian leadership? What is the possible outcome you're looking at?
So, not at all. I would say that Israel is not interested in setting a certain name or a certain party or a certain group as those who should lead the future regime of Iran. Israel is staying out of this. Israel chose not to intervene, and I would say rightly so. However, I would say that we remember the days of the Shah until 1979, in which Israel had very close and good relations with the Iranian regime at the time, including direct flights, could you believe? Direct flights from Tel Aviv to Tehran with Israel's national airline. So, I'm sorry, I need to go again to a shelter. Apologies for that.
All right, no worries. Thank you very much, in fact, for taking time out for joining us here on the show. All right, so that's what Israel is saying right now. IDF spokesperson, for that matter, Major General Asthana, that we are not looking at putting a government in place. We don't want a government to be put in place, but at the same time, we are hoping that people are going to elect a government on their own. I mean, I'm not sure how realistic that is. She's not with us anymore on the show. I wish I could ask her that question. So let me take that question from you, Major General. Is it even a remote possibility that you'll end up having a civilian government without the massive chaos that is likely to unfold if all the top commanders and leaders of the Iranian regime are killed in a matter of coming few weeks? Is there a possibility that there'll be a natural uprising and then there'll be a civilian government and that will all happen within a few months' time?
I think they are being too ambitious. It's not a possibility at all for very many reasons. And let me highlight, not all, of course, she is not there, but then let me highlight. Firstly, yes, there is no doubt that people are angry with Khamenei regime because of economic reasons, because of sufferings, and because of many other issues. But their hatred towards US and Israel is more than their anger against Khamenei. So I think there is a miscalculation by the US as well as Israel there. Second issue, which they are looking at, the son of Shah, he doesn't have the traction in Iran. Even earlier also, there were surveys carried out in Iran, and I don't think more than 10 to 15% people are, by any stretch of imagination, inclined towards the former Shah. As far as the regime is concerned, unfortunately, there is no alternative. Because even if these religious clerics, a number of them get killed and there is nobody, I think the IRGC, somebody from IRGC, who will not certainly be less radical than the current regime, is going to take over. So, unfortunately, this regime change is not working for them by any stretch of imagination. The last option of regime change was that if US decides to take a risk and goes with boots on ground, that's the only possibility. I can tell you, with all the experiences of various previous wars, you will see that just by stand of attack, no regime change has taken place. If that was the possibility, then regime would have changed in Ukraine. It has not. So like this, only by stand of attacks, nothing is going to happen.
Okay.
And getting boots on ground is as risky, in fact, more risky than what it was in Afghanistan. So then it's Afghanistan 2.0, that kind of situation. And in both cases, perhaps Americans will not be that happy and American Congress will not be that happy. And that is why I emphasized on the first point to say that this operation has not been approved by American Congress. And American Senate has not approved this operation. But notwithstanding that, President has got some powers and he has gone ahead with it for whatever reasons. What is the justification to his Congress? That I think we will leave it for some other day. But notwithstanding that, the regime change ambition and the political aim is a far-fetched one. Even if the regime gets changed, we are not going to get less radical regime than what it is there already. So I don't think that's a practical aim. But all other aims, out of that also now President Trump has actually boxed himself in a very awkward situation, because if he just goes away with achieving the nuclear disarmament with Iran, then Democrats are going to tell him, even in the next election, that this is exactly what JCPOA was. So what else have you achieved? And Iran certainly is not going to give away the missile part of it,
Absolutely.
which they are hoping for. Back to you.
Absolutely. Not going to give away. I mean, some of these terms seem to be simply unacceptable for any regime, least of all Iranian regime. You know, if history were to serve as a lesson, Air Marshal VPS Rana, then US has botched up quite a few of these assaults on other nations, resulting in further extremism, resulting in groups like ISIS, resulting in groups like Taliban now dominating the mainstream. These are all creations of the US military operations or failed military operations for that matter. Now, as of today, we're only looking at aerial assaults, but there could be a possibility, other experts are pointing out, that there could be boots on the ground. But even that, for that matter, Air Marshal, is not going to be very helpful. In fact, it's going to further serve as a blow to, the US forces. Is there a possibility, in your assessment, in the near future, that perhaps US is going to go beyond aerial assaults?
I don't think in a hurry US would go for boots on ground. First of all, like General Asthana also said, it's very, very difficult proposition. It's not easy. And like you said, we have examples of Vietnam to see, we have examples of Afghanistan to see, and Iraq is also one example. But for Iraq, like I said earlier, there was a huge preparation. There is a logistical challenge when you want to take boots on ground. It's not so easy. You have to have the huge logistical thing. And like I said earlier, all your air bases as on today are very, very soft targets. They are not so heavily defended that you can do your logistical build-up and then you plan. Because if you have not done it before you launching this strike, then now building up that logistical support is going to be very, very challenging under the circumstances, because every time you are going to build up in the area, you are going to be hit. So it's not going to be easy to do that kind of build up now. Either it should have already been done up earlier with huge air defense umbrella created around all these bases, which I don't see that kind of preparations. Whatever is there is an organic air defense apparatus which is there, but there has not been any build-up. So since there has not been a build-up, so create a logistical concentration to enable boots on ground is going to be very, very challenging. And in my opinion, I don't see it in hurry. If at all that happens, probably it will take a lot of time. It will have a lot of challenges, and it would amount to a lot of casualties as well.
All right. On our screens right now, I believe visuals coming in from Dubai where explosions have been heard. Iranian Shahid drones have fallen on Jumeirah in Dubai, and dramatic visuals there coming on your screens right now of the recent Iranian attack in Dubai. This is expanding with each possible minute, with more and more cities, more and more countries, seeing themselves becoming a part of this involuntary war that has started in West Asia. Right? All right, look at those visuals there.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Extremely scary visuals there coming from Dubai at this point in time.
Oh my God.
Surinder Singh Lali,
Oh my God.
let's for a minute
Oh my God.
call a sword. This is absolute Western duplicity. This is US hypocrisy at its best, and we've seen this hegemony unfolding many a times in the history. We read about what happened in Vietnam. We read about what happened in Afghanistan. We read about what happened in Iraq. Those weapons of mass destruction, that plotting and planning, that idea that someone was building a nuclear arsenal. Many of these assertions have fallen flat over years. And I believe, this is that chapter that perhaps our kids are going to read once again in the history books. But fact of the matter is, we don't seem to learn from that history. There needs to be imminent pushback, immediate pushback, and that pushback has to come from, none other than Americans for that matter, because they are the ones who are going to lose more Iran will absolutely lose this battle. Will lose this battle maybe in months or years to come. God knows how long it's going to last. But point is, this is no charity to the people of Iran. If that's what US President wants, the world to think that he's doing some sort of charity for the people of Iran because he wants Iranians to choose their own leaders, that's not the case. This is a clear classic case of trying to challenge the regime and change the regime because US wants a more favorable regime in Iran. And, one should be able to see this very clearly at this point.
For the change, I'm going to give the devil the due, which is Donald J. Trump. He has opened it up in terms of American interference post the Second War, 71 regime changes, what they've been doing across the world through think tanks, through world financial institutions, and you name it. So let's give it to him. He's not as plush and as sophisticated as the Obamas were, but this is exactly what the United States have been doing ever since that Second World War. Number two, the cliched word of regime change. In Iran, it started with a regime change. In 1953, MI6 and CIA engineered a coup. They removed a democratically elected prime minister called Mossadegh. Why? Because he said that British petroleum should be audited for the oil which comes out of Iran. And that's when the buck was passed and America was getting stronger and the United Kingdom was kind of getting old. And then America takes over, and then 1979, the Shah, and that's when my family left Iran. So this business has been going on for a long time. Now that Donald Trump has come and uncovered everything, number one. Number two, I wish I could share the optimism of the Lieutenant Colonel from Israel. Regime change, I'm even more scared because who do you leave it with? With the IRGC? It'll be more like headless chickens running around. They're a bigger mafia than what were. So, from the frying pan into the fire, it's like doing in Iraq. At least there was a rudimentary Iraq. Things were happening, but now what is happening in Iraq or Libya or Syria? These are disaster zones, not only within themselves, they've disturbed the entire zone. So I'm not too sure if Donald Trump really knows. He's probably prevailing under the lobbies of AIPAC and whosoever funded. For that matter, Venezuela, what did he go there for? He said he's going there for drugs. Have you heard of drugs ever since? No. Now he wants the oil. And he says Exxon will come and drill the oil. Exxon says we can't do it. So it's all a very messy business. Neither I hold a brief for Iran or for the United States, but end of the day, it was all about oil. And the next discussion we're going to have soon is on digital sovereignty. So let's brace ourselves for it.